I'm really pleased to be here because this is a kind of a key part of everything I do. It's the kind of foundation of my practice is obviously treating women with ovarian cancer, but ensuring that they have access to novel agents through clinical trials. And, you know, together with the NCRI, we've developed a number of clinical trials. And I'm going to talk to you a couple of things in my talk today. Something a little bit about what a clinical trial is and how you can access and what questions you might ask clinicians that you go to meet, and then a quick sort of whirlwind tour of what's out there at the moment. And it really is just cherry picking a few trials. There are other trials that are available, and so it's not just the only research that's happening. So the first part of the talk is why are sort of clinical trials important? Why are sort of interventional trials important? And they're really important for us to be able to assess the effectiveness of new treatments and also the side effects of those treatments, and to compare them with current treatments, because we really want to know, are they any better and are they tolerable for patients? The benefits to you are that you can play an active role in your research, in your healthcare. You can access these new treatments before they become widely available, so it can take up to 10 years for new drugs to come onto the market. So clinical trials are really a way for all of you to get access to some of these new exciting developments that are just coming through now. And I think you've alluded to this, Anwen, about being more frequently monitored on a clinical trial. Now, some people really like that, so I've put that as a benefit, but also as a difficulty, because it does sometimes mean that you are coming up to see us a lot more than you would be if you were receiving standard treatments. And that's fine if you lived sort of 10 minutes from our centres, but, you know, some of you I know travel sometimes an hour, sometimes several hours. We have people coming from Scotland, Leeds, all over the place to Oxford for trials. So, you know, it is a bit of a commitment for you as well, and we do appreciate that, which is why we want to make sure these trials are available across the country, so you're not sort of, you know, traveling long distances. So there may be also potential side effects that we don't know about yet within clinical trials, and that's also sometimes a difficulty when you are on a trial, that you may not feel as well as you do on standard treatment. I think a key part that motivates a lot of people to go on to trials is the fact that they can help others in the future. So all our developments, all the drugs you're using now have actually been trialed in women with ovarian cancer in the past. So carboplatin, a drug that, you know, is the kind of the backbone of everything we do, has been trialed over the years in thousands of women and has been shown to be effective. So everything we treat you with now, somebody has been in a clinical trial and proven its benefit. So there are different types of trials that you may be eligible for. So research is often divided into these stages, and we often talk about them as phases. So if you meet us in our clinics, we may talk to you about the stage at which your trial is. Initially, when we look at trials, there may be sort of preclinical data from the labs, and they've talked about a lot of the research that's happening, some of it funded by Target, but other agencies like the MRC and CRUK also fund a lot of basic science research. And that initial research can then be translated into the clinic through what we call early phase 1 trials. And these are often small trials where we are looking at the side effects of the drug and also trying to find the most effective and most tolerable dose to go forward into larger studies. Phase 2 trials are looking at the activity of that drug, often in a particular setting, so for example in ovarian cancer, and we're looking to see if this drug is effective and also how tolerable this agent is. Once we see a signals of activity and tolerability, we will then use this to take us through into phase 3 trials. And these are much larger studies involving hundreds, often thousands of women. And we will compare the activity of these novel agents or new treatments with what we use standardly in the clinic currently. Once a drug is licensed, there may be other trials that take place, phase 4 trials, where we are looking to see how that drug works in the real world. So it's fine in a very targeted population with specific entry criteria. But how do women in the real world, outside of a clinical trial, monitored maybe not quite the same way, how do they tolerate that drug? And are there sort of side effects or signals that we should be looking for? So the important phases through which all these drugs will move through. So looking at the phases of a clinical trial, we can see that initially the preclinical work can take many years to come through into a phase 1 trial. And then the phase 1 trials will often involve small numbers of women, often 10 to 20 women. And although they say days to weeks, sometimes it can be quite difficult to find the right dose, and these trials can sometimes take a little longer. And then into phase 2, we often look at hundreds of women, and these trials will often take, again, months to years. And then in the larger phase 3 trials, we need to look at hundreds and thousands of women, and these trials often take 2 or 3 years to recruit and another sort of 5 years to sort of read out. And if you look at the development of Parp inhibitors, which have been spoken about today, the phase 1 trials, we actually did some of those phase 1 trials at the Marsden in 2006, and it got its license around sort of 2016. So, bang on that sort of 10 years from, the first treatments in humans to coming through to licensed treatment. So you can see it is a long and sort of laborious journey for a drug to make. So if you are interested in clinical trials, you may meet a member of the trials team, and they may discuss the clinical trial with you. And this is some of the sort of key information and key questions that you might think to ask the trials teams if you meet us. Hopefully, all of us will be giving you all of this information, because this is all key information you need before you can make a decision whether you want to take part in the trial. You may want to know what extra tests are required, what the aims of the trial are, what are we trying to find out, what are the endpoints, when do we know if this treatment's effective, what are the side effects or risks to you if you take part, and what might the benefits be of that new treatment. I think it's important to know the additional tests that you might need, and also what the extra appointments might be and extra visits that you're going to need to take part in the clinical trial, and whether some of those tests can be done locally or whether they all have to be done at the research centre. We will often ask for your permission for blood and tissue samples for that research, and that's because when the research finishes, we want to really try and look to see why some women have benefited from that treatment and why others may not have, and whether there are any signals that we can pick up that may help us in the future actually decide that before people take these treatments. So are there specific proteins or that we can pick up that actually show this woman's going to benefit from this treatment, so we're going to do this, and other women might not benefit, so we might use an alternative treatment. So really important part of any clinical trial is really what we learn and understand beyond just whether it's active or not. We really want to try and learn who it's active in, why it's active in them, and who might it work best in. And that really helps us to kind of personalize your treatment and your care in the future. Because at the moment, it's a sort of one-size-fits-all strategy. You all get carboplatin and carboplatin. And actually what we're looking to do is really learn who does best with which specific treatment, so that we can develop more sort of personalized, more specific treatments for you along your cancer journey. So once you've met us, you will also be given written information, and that's a kind of a properly ethically approved patient information sheet, and that gives you a summary of everything we will have discussed and further details of your commitments within the study and what the aims of the study might be. So once you have had time to read that, you will be asked if you would like to take part, and if you would, it's completely voluntary. We would then ask you to sign informed consent, and that just really means that we've provided you with all the key facts about the trial, that you've had time to ask questions, talk to GPs or other family members about whether you'd like to take part, and then you sign consent, and that's when you really start within the trial, because that's when we start to do all the safety tests and the additional tests to make sure that you are suitable for the trial and that it would be safe for you to take these trial treatments. And you may within the trial receive something called a placebo. And a placebo treatment is where we're comparing a new treatment or a new therapy against an inactive product. And that's to make sure that the new treatment really is effective. And there's very strict sort of guidelines as to when we can use a placebo. So I think a lot of people, when they have placebo trials, get a little bit disappointed at the fact that they may receive an inactive drug and that they may not know, and the researcher themselves may not know, whether they are on this active treatment or not. And actually, the settings in which we use placebo are really quite strictly controlled. We wouldn't use a placebo ever if we felt that there was a better treatment out there. So generally, we will use a placebo in a setting where, as standard of care, you would not be receiving any treatment at all. So it's sort of ethical then to use a placebo, because actually, if you weren't on a trial, we would simply be monitoring you and not treating you. So I think it is important to have placebo-controlled trials because it really helps us decide whether a treatment is effective and what the survival benefits from that treatment might be. So don't be disappointed if you are on a placebo trial. You may not know if you're on the active drug, and we won't know, but these trials are how all of the drugs that we have today have been developed. You may also be randomized to different treatments. So you may have information about a trial that has lots of different possible treatments, and you may wonder how we decide who gets what treatment. And it's really important within trials to avoid any kind of bias where we select certain people to receive certain treatments. So the way that we avoid this is by using a randomization process via a computer, and it's a chance allocation. So you are allocated to a specific treatment arm. We don't decide, and you don't get to decide. So you have to really be comfortable with all the different treatments on offer within that trial if there is a randomization process, because you may end up with any of the different treatment options. But it really is important for us, when we look at the results of the trial, to know that there has been a random allocation. So how do you kind of access trials? I saw quite a few of you are within trials, so you've obviously got a lot of trials running within your centres, but there are people who would like to access clinical trials who haven't been offered them. And it may be that there just weren't any suitable trials at that particular point. And so the best thing to do is to speak to your oncologist and ask them about potential trials at your centre. And you can do that at every step at which you need treatment. You can always ask. It's not that it has to be just at the first treatment. It can be at your second, third, whatever treatment. If you would like to take part in a trial, just ask your oncologist, are there any trials that are running at our centre or at centres close by that I would perhaps be suitable for? And they may be able to give you some information about trials that are running at their centre, some aims of the trials, and the benefits of taking part. If you can't find any trials through your oncologist, you can also access websites such as the Target Ovarian Cancer Pathfinder, which is fantastic kind of central resource of all the trials that are going on in the country, and also who the kind of contact doctors are at those sites. So then your doctors can contact those doctors with information about you, because that's really helpful if we get sort of some background information, because we can then screen as to whether we think you might be eligible and save you sort of a trip to the centre if you might not be eligible. CR UK also have an excellent website about clinical research, cancer research in general, and they also have a find a trial section which you can have a look through for ovarian cancer and many other cancers as well. The NCRI website has a Pathfinder map, which is not quite as easy and kind of front-facing, but there's also information from the NCRI website and also the ECMC sites, which take part in the early phase clinical trials, so some of the more first-line trials of agents, you can also access information. And if you find something that looks interesting, just have a chat with your doctor. They should be able to find out who's running that trial and speak to them directly on your behalf. So I guess the thing that people are most interested in is what's running now and may I be suitable for these trials. So as I said, this is really a snapshot of some of the studies that are running at quite a few centres in the UK. There are other trials, so if there's something specific or you don't see something that sort of matches what you might need, actually just speak to your oncologist, because they will have knowledge of all of these frontline trials, and they will also have knowledge of who to speak to, you know, kind of phone a friend if you might need something a bit more bespoke or specialized. So the key sort of frontline trials that are running in the UK at the moment, the first trial is ICON-8B, and this is a trial for women who have been newly diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and it compares a couple of treatment arms. It's comparing carboplatin and Taxol chemotherapy, which is often a standard treatment, which is given 3 weekly, with a weekly treatment of Taxol, and it's combining that with a drug called bevacizumab, which many of you will have heard of and some of you will have received. It's a drug that blocks new blood vessel formation. So this trial is an international trial. It's running in a number of centres across the UK, and women will be randomly allocated to receive one of these treatments. And the lead investigator is Dr. Clamp, but many of your centres may well be running this trial. And the main aim of this trial is to see whether the weekly treatment of Taxol together with Avastin and carboplatin may be more effective for women than the 3 weekly application of carboplatin, Taxol and Avastin, which is the standard treatment at present. The next trial is a trial of upfront radical therapy. So the TRUST trial is an international trial. It's been coordinated by the European Gynae Oncology Group, and this is running at Imperial College in London. It's a trial that is looking at radical surgery upfront, followed by chemotherapy, and also the role of chemotherapy followed by surgery. And it's really a trial that is looking to assess whether radical surgery has additional benefits to some of the standard surgery that is on offer in the UK. And this is currently only running in one site in the UK at Imperial. So in women who have ovarian cancer that has recurred, there are a number of trials that are running at the moment, and these are again trials that are running in a number of centres across the UK. ICON-9 is a trial that we're running in about 30 to 40 sites. It's just opening up. It's currently open in about 10 sites, and it's a trial that's open to women with recurrent ovarian carcinoma, so cancer that has come back. And it's randomly allocating women to receive either olaparib, which is a Parp inhibitor you would have heard about earlier from Yvette, or a combination of olaparib with a drug that blocks new blood vessel formation, cediranib. And that treatment is given following the end of chemotherapy as what we call a maintenance therapy to try and prevent the cancer coming back so quickly so we can delay the time to your next treatment. This is an international study, and it's running, as I say, in a number of centres across the UK. So if you're interested, please do speak to your oncologist about this. I wanted to talk a little bit about Parp inhibitors as a treatment as opposed to a maintenance strategy. So the Ariel 4 trial is a trial that is running in a number of centres again in the UK. It's a trial of chemotherapy versus a Parp inhibitor called rucaparib. And again, women are allocated to either receive chemotherapy or a Parp inhibitor. And this is looking to assess the effectiveness of Parp inhibitors as a treatment rather than as a post-chemotherapy treatment. For women who carry genetic mutations, such as the BRCA gene, there are specific trials that are open to them. Again, combining chemotherapy with Parp inhibitors and also blood vessel blocking drugs such as cediranib. This is a trial where all women, or even on the chemotherapy arm, once their cancer worsens, can also access olaparib. At the moment, it's for women who have BRCA gene mutations, But in the next couple of months, we will be opening up an arm where women who don't have this BRCA gene will also be eligible for this trial. And this is running in about 14 centres across the UK and in Ireland as well. For women who have clear cell cancers, there is the Nic trial, which is currently comparing an anti-blood vessel drug called nintedanib to standard chemotherapy to see if this is more effective. And again, this is running nationally across multiple sites. And if you would like to take part in this, Dr. Glasspool is the key investigator, and your oncologist can contact her if it's not running at your site. I think you've heard a lot about immunotherapy, and at the moment there is a trial that's an international study, a European trial that's again running just at one site in the UK at the Royal Marsden, and this is looking at immunotherapy agents, immunotherapy in combination with anti-angiogenics such as Avastin, so that's a drug again that blocks new blood vessel formation. So there is sort of new developments of novel combinations coming through, and I think really that's what I wanted to highlight, that there are a number of new treatments with immune agents, with Parp inhibitors, in combination with chemotherapy, following chemotherapy, instead of chemotherapy. So a lot of research going on, and there should be a trial that will hopefully, at some point in your journey, be suitable for you. We're also looking at novel ways of using chemotherapy. So it's very easy to think just about sort of novel strategies, but actually chemotherapy is the backbone of everything we've done in ovarian cancer treatment over the years. And are there ways that we can repackage chemotherapy or different forms of these chemotherapy agents that may be more active and potentially less toxic than standard chemotherapy? So there's a trial of a novel agent, of a novel gemcitabine agent that doesn't have a name yet, that's being developed in a phase 2 trial at the moment. And this is really for women in whom cancer has come back. And it's a trial looking to see the activity of this drug, this novel gemcitabine analog in this group of women. And again, that trial is nearing the end of its recruitment, but is still currently running across the country. So I think the key take-home messages are not necessarily that you've found a trial that you like the sound of, but that there is a lot of research going on, and we are all indebted to all of the women that go into these trials, and also all the funding bodies that are really helping to drive forward all the kind of changes that have been taking place over the last sort of 10 years in ovarian cancer. You can see that the big agents that are coming through are Parp inhibitors, and agents that block blood vessel formation, immunotherapy. That's still sort of early on in its development. There are sort of a number of trials coming up in the frontline setting in ovarian cancer, and also novel forms of these chemotherapy agents. And I think, interestingly for us, it's going to be how we use all of those agents. How do we pick and choose which ones you should have access to and when you should have access to them? And I think that's all about sort of personalizing care again. And that's why it's so important to speak to your oncologist and, discuss trials at an early stage, because it really might impact the treatment that you get now or in the future, depending on what trials are coming up or might be available to you. And really our strategy nationally, a number of us sit on the kind of NCRI Gynae Oncology group, is to really try and make sure that for women with this cancer, that there is a trial potentially available to you at every stage of your cancer journey. Because we really want to ensure that you have access to these novel strategies, novel therapies, before they are licensed. So I just wanted to also signpost quite a few studies that are coming up. There are currently sort of 5 new trials in development for women who are newly diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and they're in various stages of setup. And I think by the end of the year, we'll have at least 2 or 3 of them open. And they will incorporate agents such as the Parp inhibitors, immunotherapy, and also drugs that block new blood vessel formation. So a lot of new treatments coming up for women who have just been diagnosed, but also with women in whom their cancer has come back. There are a lot of trials coming up incorporating these same agents, but also combinations of these agents to see how we might improve treatment in the future. So I'd just like to take a couple of minutes just to thank everybody and their families of anyone who's taken part in trials, because without you, we kind of wouldn't be where we are now. And, I think it is a really exciting time in terms of access to new agents, and also in the way that we, sort of decide what we do in the treatment of women with ovarian cancer. So thank you.